traffic because it was rush hour, and took ourselves up 30 or 40 feet.
The pink champagne on ice, mirrors on the ceiling, and we're all the victims of our own little pleasures. It was kind of like the excesses we had here in California at that time. We were in the 70s, and everybody was kind of indulging themselves into Lord knows what that's going on around here. But that's what the Eagles were addressing with this particular song, was the fact that you're in Hotel California, you're here in the Golden State, and you're part of this, but you can never leave. You really don't want to lose all this. And that's really the essence of the song. And so it really became a statement, especially for us here in Southern California.
黄金の地、カリフォルニア。1800年代半ばに起こったゴールドラッシュ。人々はこの地に金を求め集まった。そして時を経て、ハリウッドに代表されるカリフォルニアは、多くのミュージシャンやアーティストたちが憧れ目指す場所となった。そんな街はホテルカリフォルニア以前にも多くのミュージシャンによってさまざまに歌われてきた。60年代半ば、ママス&パパスの夢のカリフォルニアではカリフォルニアを夢見る気持ちが歌われた。そして時代とともにカリフォルニアの夢に理想と現実が描かれるようになる。カリフォルニアはもはや夢の楽園ではなくなっていた。イーグルス、ホテルカリフォルニアの歌詞にそうあるように、1969年はミュージックシーンにとって大きな意味を持っていた。60年代に生まれたウエストコーストサウンド。その源流であるザ・バーズはフォークロックと呼ばれるジャンルを確立した。その流れは続き、フォークやカントリーの影響を受けたウエストコーストサウンドはアコースティックな音と爽やかなハーモニーを特徴としたロックへと発展。この街に集まってきたミュージシャンたちはそこで育まれたサウンドの中に自分たちのロックスピリットを表現していった。そしてこの年、ウッドストックフェスティバルでロックは頂点を迎える。 カウンターカルチャーを集大成したこのフェスティバルは音楽イベントとしてのみならずヒッピー時代の頂点を示す象徴とされた。詰めかけた観客はおよそ40万人。ウエストコーストサウンド。そのムーブメントの中心となったのがウエストハリウッドにあるライブハウストロバドール。そして同じバックバンドの仲間ランディ・マイズナーとバーニー・リードンの4人で独立。1971年イーグルスとしてスタートした。ドン・フェルダーの加入によってよりハードなロック志向が強くなった。このスタジオにある人物を訪ねた。みんながぶっ飛んだというギタリストドン・フェルダー。
We had to kind of shift out of that country feel and more into the rock feel, which is why I was brought into. That's exactly my assignment. My mission when I joined the band was to put an edge on it, a rock and roll edge.
しかしカントリー志向の強かったバーニー・リードンが音楽性の違いから脱退。カンザス生まれのジョー・ウォルシュが新メンバーに。新生イーグルスに次なる名曲の期待がかかった。この時期アメリカのレコード業界は空前の好景気に沸いていた。ロックは完全にアルバムセールスの時代に突入。桁違いの売り上げが期待できる巨大産業へと成長していた。しかしそれは60年代から続いたウッドストック世代の時代がそのスピリットを失いつつあることを意味していた。それはロサンゼルスを中心とするウエストコーストサウンドも同じであった。それどころか街自体も。
In the 70s, it was starting to go into a decline because I was part of an effort at that time to refurbish the Hollywood sign, which everybody knows around the world. It was starting to fall apart. It was getting a little dilapidated. That was the first effort. And Hollywood itself, from the standpoint of what it was, this magic part of the 50s and the 60s even, it had started to go into decline. And you had people in the doorways sleeping, and you had people wandering around in all sorts of dress, and the drugs were really a part of the culture at that time. So it had really started to a decline.
夢を求めてよそからやってきたイーグルスはカリフォルニアの衰退に逆行するかのように新しいアルバムの制作に取り掛かった。彼らは1969年のスピリットを保ち続けようとした。高まる周囲の期待。そしてあの名曲が生まれる。ノースカロライナ州シャーロット。カリフォルニアから遠く離れたこの地にホテルカリフォルニアを誕生させた人物を訪ねた。イーグルスの3枚目のアルバムから関わったプロデューサー兼サウンドエンジニアのビル・シムジク。
So by the time we're getting ready to do Hotel California, we've got a lot to, we have to really beat that again. I mean, every time we've made an album, we raise the bar higher and higher, and now we're up there. So there was a little bit of a us against the world attitude when we first started that. Well, that whole album took 9 months. on and off. I mean, we weren't constantly in it, but we worked for 3 weeks and take 2 off, and work for 3 more and take 2 off. But over a 9-month period, that's what that one took. Don Felder would bring in a cassette of various instrumental tracks that he would write and come up with, and this was one of maybe 6 or 8 that he brought in at the beginning of the project. And everybody was drawn to it immediately because of the 12-string descending line, and but no, there were no words, so it was well, what are we going to do with it?
Well, I was living on a rented beach house in Malibu, my first house in Malibu, and it was just a spectacular summery day. And I had just been out playing on the beach with my first son, who was, he was about 9 months old at the time. And so I'd come in the house and sat down on the couch in the living room, and I had a 12-string guitar, and I just started tinkering around, looking out the window, kind of out across the sand and the sun glistening on the water, and started playing this little progression, which was the opening progression for Hotel California. And it was just the moment. It was just kind of captured the feeling of sitting there on the couch in that moment.
不朽のあのメロディーを生み出したマリブの海。
So Henley called it Mexican reggae because it sounded like some Mexican kind of reggae track. And that was the working title until we actually sat down and started working on lyrics for it and ideas. And I think he used to drive around in his car, and he would listen to cassettes in his car. And he had listened to it so much over and over and over, trying to get song ideas and melody ideas and lyric ideas. And once he kind of starts getting a little taste of something and a few little visions start coming into his head, he stays with it. And the repetition of playing it over and over and over is his process of developing the lyrics and developing the melody and stuff. So I knew when he was on fire about it, when he showed that he really liked it and wanted to work on it, was inspired by it, that I felt really great because I like the track too.
We actually cut that track 3 different times. And each time there were no lyrics to this yet, and because Don Felder really didn't write lyrics per se. I mean, Don Henley was the vice president in charge of lyrics, so we cut it once, and it was too fast for what he started to write after that. So that's when we really knew that, and then he started playing with the melody and realized we'd cut it in the wrong key.
He sounded like Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees, singing really high in a falsetto, and it just didn't fit the track. It was a great guitar key, E minor, but it was the wrong key for Don. So we really didn't hit the first chord correctly. We had to go back and figure out what key Don could sing the song in. And it turned out he sang it best in B minor, which is not a great guitar key. It's not particularly comfortable. You can play in it, but it's just not something a lot of songs are written in. So we had to go back into the studio and re-record the entire track again from ground up. And finally we hit what you might call, the right chord.
ウエストコーストのこの街でもう一人当時の話を聞いた。イーグルスの元ベーシストランディ・マイズナー。
Well, my approach was always with Henley because when I played with Don Henley, he was very precise, and I wanted to be as precise as he was. And the main thing about that is like the kick drum and the bass should be the same instrument in a way. And so I followed his kick drum just to the T. And the backbeats, and every once in a while I'd throw in a couple of licks that I liked. I loved it. I mean, just the track itself was great. And him and Walsh playing those guitars, and the way it was designed with Bill Szymczyk. He was pulling his hair out.
And Bill had a brilliant set of ears, probably some of the best ears I've ever come across as far as being able to sit behind a console and listen to a performance and know when it all gels for like a verse, or the solo section was great, or the first chorus was great. And as we would record our basic tracks, we would record a basic track for 2 or 3 days. Every day we'd record it 8, 10, 12, 14 times on these single machines. And Bill would sit there and he would say, good first verse. And that might be the only thing that happened on that take. The next take, he'd go by and oh, that was a good second chorus. And the people were making notes, his second engineer. So as we would go through and play this over and over and over and over, Bill had a great sense of talent about being able to recognize a certain part of a song when it really gelled perfectly.
That's how I describe my job. I am a professional listener. That's my job. My modus operandi in those days, it was obviously 24-track tape. It was way before, digital recording and Pro Tools and so on. So my way of doing things was to get about 5 or 6 killer takes, try to get 5 or 6 right in a row. Then I would take the 4, 5, or 6 of the best takes and put them on a reel. And I would go through each little section, the intro. I'd listen to all 6 intros and then the first verse, and I would edit this stuff together. This is the cutting 2-inch tape. And in Hotel California, I'll never forget this, there were 33 edits, engineering and producing. And I had a lot to do with keeping everybody together. Just moving along at the same space, going, let's all be in this together.
歌詞をつけたのはドン・ヘンリー。その内容は今もなおさまざまな解釈、論議が繰り返されるほど印象的なものだった。
So when he came back and told us about his idea, and it didn't take a lot of explaining, and the first few lines of the lyrics that we had heard, it just really set the tone for the whole song, and it was like watching a story kind of unfold. But it was written in a certain way that it was like a lot of, if someone were to be able to throw pictures up, and you could see a picture, and then it would fade in another picture, and it's leading you towards an impression rather than a story of he said, she said, da da. It's more of it's like an abstract impression with images that he's throwing at you that, in my opinion, just works in such a brilliant way. And he's
I will never forget, as long as I live, is doing the end guitars, the dueling guitars between Joe Walsh and Don Felder. And we would do it where I would sit at the board, and the amps were out in the studio, and I'd have one guy on one side and the other guy on the other side. And we would work this out. And all those end guitars, which is like 4 minutes, 3-4 minutes long, took us 3 days to do that. I knew that we were onto something here. I knew this was going to be really, really good. Initially, I was a tad worried about how long it was, because I think it was something like 7 minutes or something like that. So I was a little worried about that. But as time went on, and as the overdubs went on, especially all the lead guitars from both Joe Walsh and Don Felder, it was like, well, I don't care if it's 12 minutes long. It's fabulous, and it's...
aircraft that came out of the
のホテルとは別のホテルで撮影されたという。
And this is the inside of the Hotel California. It was at the time a flop house and rather grubby inside and full of cobwebs and pretty grim. But we stripped the whole of the inside out and redecorated, hung drapes, put a new floor down, brought in a ton of light and turned it into the lobby of the Hotel California. Cleaned up and got out. I think we did it all in like 6 hours. No, we grabbed all our band's members, friends, anyone else we could, bring in by bus to surround the guys and do all that. We do have that little figure up in the window where we have no idea, sort of Rastafarian, sort of leering at us from the top. We've no idea where he came from. Not a clue. But I guess he was benign because they sold 26 million copies in, like a week.
そしてこのジャケットとともに、ホテルカリフォルニアは世に送り出された。
Sales and airplay happened both pretty quickly on that song. In fact, it went to #1 on the Billboard chart very quickly. And so radio went right on it. Now, it was a long song, so a lot of stations played Hotel California in the full length, which is rather unusual for top 40 radio.
I remember the first time I actually heard it on the radio, not in a studio, but on the radio, and I felt, wow, this is amazing that they're playing it on the radio, a 6-minute piece of music, and it felt really great, like I'd been part of creating something as part of this band that was like really super. I mean, it was like above and beyond what the normal records were you heard on the radio. It was really a great sense of pride, of accomplishment that we had done something that was just really above us all. I mean, it felt like the sum of all the parts was greater than any one of the individual parts. It wasn't just me, and it wasn't Don, it wasn't Joe. It was all of us together had pulled together to make something that was bigger and better than any one of us individually. So it felt really great.
It's one of those perennials. It'll be around forever. As long as there's music on the radio, there will still be a Hotel California. The lyrics itself, the one about you can check out but you can never leave, they had so many great lyrics that people still quote today that are almost like passages in our culture. And that's what made that song so special too.
「この曲に描かれたロックフロンティアの終焉。その美しくも大敗的な世界は永遠に何かを問い続ける。
いるけど